So I'm turned on, and a lot of things going on today. Probably the first thing you want to know about, I've had many people ask me about Gretchen. Looks like she's going to be in the hospital for 4 or 5 days. She came down to me on Thursday night and said, "Dad, I'm not feeling good." And I said, "Well, what did you just eat?" And they had been out to eat dinner, and they'd eaten shrimp and chicken at a Mexican restaurant, which is one of my favorite places. And she said, "I'm just not feeling good. My stomach hurts." And I said, "Okay." So a while later, Chris came down and said, "Have you got any antacid?" And I said, "No, I used to have to use those things a lot, but I don't anymore." And so he went back up, and I woke up the next morning, and she was gone at 3 a.m. They took her to the emergency room. And the guess was, my family has a history of gallbladder problem. And many of us have had our gallbladders taken out. And it's very painful when you go through that. Many of you probably have. But we were suspecting that, and it turned out with all the tests that it showed it was pancreatitis. And how many know what a pancreas does? Okay, a few of you. One of my granddaughters, you probably have met her, Allie Billings. She was one of Joel's daughters. When she was 8 years old, we had come back from a trip, and we saw her playing ball in the field, and she was just lethargic. And my wife called Rachel and said, "Something's wrong with Allie." She said, "Oh, no, she's just going through a growing spell." And we said, "No, there's something else. Is she drinking a lot of water?" And they said, "Yeah, she's drinking a lot of water, exceptional." And so we said, "Well, something's wrong. We're suspecting diabetes." And Rachel got very upset, thought, Grandpa and Grandma were crazy. Took her to the hospital, and they emergency took her by ambulance immediately to Dartmouth Hospital. And she was, her pancreas had just quit. And that's what a pancreas does. It regulates your food and that. So with Gretchen, that's what's been going on. And she hasn't eaten in a few days. They just have gotten to the point where they're giving her ice chips. And she's already lost 20 pounds. If you know Gretchen, she doesn't need to lose 20 pounds, right? And so I just texted Chris this morning, and he said that it's going to be, several days. What they're trying to do, no food, no water, is to calm the pancreas down. And I don't know if that means that once it gets calmed down that they can go in there, and I think there's something they drain or do something with it, and either that or it just self-heals. But it's going to be several days in the hospital at least. I'm going to go over after church this morning and spend some time with her. She's at St. Anne's in Columbus. I think that's where that is. They took her from Knox to St. Anne's a day or so later after they had sort of determined that it was the pancreas problem. The other news is if you're watching Israel, which breaks my heart to see what's going on there. I've been to Israel a couple of times. You can traverse that whole country from the north, and I've been up into the north in the Megiddo area, which is Megiddo, and all the way down to the Dead Sea. You can do that in a day. And I've been along the Jordan border where we could not cross when I was there the second time, and at Tel Aviv, which is on the Mediterranean Ocean. So it's not a very large country, but I want you to try and imagine too that the trauma that's going on in every one of those 10 million people's lives, they have no peace. In fact, what we're looking at in Scripture, and maybe we'll get into a little bit of that today, is they are the apple of God's eye. And even though that they have rejected the Messiah, God still looks at them as the apple of his eye. And in fact, in Isaiah 41:8, I opened it up, it says, "But thou, Israel, art my servant Jacob, whom I have chosen, the seed of Abraham, my friend." And several places it speaks about them being the apple of God's eye. They still are, even though they're in rebellion. And how many here, we'll have a word of prayer in a moment, how many here watch Emir Tafari? Anybody? Okay, I have the name in my wallet for you today. And, okay, at least one person. He's a born-again, saved Christian. He's a major in the IDF. And some reason they pick him as a spokesman because he speaks our language. And he gives probably the best report of what's going on in Israel up to date, when you can get it up to date. He has over 455,000 that you'll see when you go in there and text him, 450,000 people that look at him almost daily. But I've seen him preaching in the Philippines, I've seen him preaching in the States, all over our country here. He's probably a mid-40s-year-old man with a family, lives in the upper area of Israel. But he is one that I have been following and getting what I think is reliable information on what is going on in Israel. Bottom line, it's terrible. It's terrible. If you've seen the demonstration all across our country, it's just disgusting that these people have suffered so much in the loss of over 1,400 lives, the brutality that was there and still in our nation. Our colleges, which are infiltrated with liberal doctrine. Listen, I lived in San Francisco till I was 31. I had a tow truck company that I owned. And I was in the Haight-Ashbury area of the drug capital of that city, and watched things and saw things that a human being ought not to watch. That was back in the 70s. The reason I ended up in New Hampshire was because I did not want to raise my family in San Francisco. And I said to my wife, who was from New Hampshire, I said, we're going to go back to New Hampshire, and I'm going to buy a business there in the upper portions of New Hampshire. Beautiful, beautiful state.